Welcome. We are finally ready to get started with Autocad. Today, your life is going to change. First thing you need to do is in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen, you're going to see a window symbol. If you click on that window, it's going to bring up the programs on your computer. You're going to look for a folder that says Autocad 2020, and you're going to go to the pull down and you're going to select Autocad 2020. If you have something that says Autocad Mechanical, Autocad Electrical, that is not what you want. You want Autocad 2020. And once you click on that, it is going to bring up a window that opens up that says Autocad 2020 on it. And it has a red structure on the right-hand side. If that is not what you're seeing, then you are in the wrong program. Once it opens, your screen should look similar to mine. Yours may look a little bit different based on the size of your screen. Things could be a little bit squished together, but basically you should have the exact same items that I have. At the very top, you're going to see a big red A. You're going to see some other shortcut menus here. We'll talk about that. At the top, it should say Autodesk AutoCAD 2020 educational version. Whether you're working from school or you're working from home, as long as you've downloaded the version, that's what it will say. There will be some other things along the top, and then you're going to see the ribbons, and then you'll see the drawing area. The first thing we want to do is we want to go up here where the big red A is. This is actually called your application menu. I call it the big red A because if I say the big red A, you know exactly where to go. If I say the application menu, you may have to really think about that. Under the application menu, you have the choice of new and open and some other items here. If we are starting a new drawing from scratch, this is where we want to go. If we're going to open a drawing that's already open, we can go here and go to drawing and then browse to find our drawing. Under new, you'll see I have some drawings listed in the right hand side of that. Those are my most recent documents. If I want to open one of them, I can go directly there and open it without having to browse through my computer to get to them. Typically, unless we have already been working on a drawing, we want to start with a new drawing. So click on new. The first thing you're going to see is a pop-up box. This box up in the left-hand corner says select template. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on templates today because we will talk about this template every time we have a lecture. Basically, your template is a preset drawing for us to start with. It may have our textiles in it. It may have our layers in it preset. It may have some blocks in it preset. Typically, when you go to work for a company, they are going to have a template that they want you to use to start your drawings with. We haven't set up a template yet, but we will be doing that throughout at least the first half to 3/4 of the semester. So what we want to select for now is the acad.dwt template, and just so you know, this template has nothing in it at this point, and we're going to say open. Now there are a couple of things that I like to do right off the bat. The first one is, you can see back here in the background, I have a grid system showing. To me, that's very annoying. So down here at the bottom of my screen, you'll see that there is a grid system that is highlighted in blue. Yours may not be on, but if it is, it will be highlighted in blue. If I just click on that button, now you see that went away. So now I just have a clean black screen. So now we are going to go back to the big red A. Now you see we have more options here. Once we've been into a drawing, now we can print it. We have some drawing utilities that we'll talk about here in a minute. Down at the bottom of that pull down, we have options, and we're going to go in and look at those. So the first thing I want to do is I want to go into drawing utilities. The thing that I need to know in here are my units. So if I come over here and go to the right and go to units, you'll see it is giving me the drawing units box. Over here in the left, I have some choices if I go to the pull down. I have architectural, I have decimal, I have engineering, I have fractional, and I have scientific. So that's one of the very first things I want to do when I started drawing, is determine what kind of units I'm going to be using. For now, we're going to leave it in decimal because that's easy to work with. And the other thing we have here is the angle. We don't need to change that. The only time we really would change anything here is if we were doing some type of surveying units or something along that line, or if we wanted our angles to be more precise. You'll notice over here also I have precision. In architectural drawing, precision is not as important. I mean, being accurate is important, but not as nearly as important as doing machining and such, where things have to have a very, very close tolerance for things to fit together. So we can change that here, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. But for right now, we'll just leave it set as it is, and we're just going to say okay down here in the bottom of the box. If I go back to the red A, this time I want to go down here to options. When I go in here, you see I have several tabs across the top. I have files, I have display, open, save, plot and publish, system, user preferences, drafting, 3D modeling, which we are not going to do, selection, and profiles. There's only a couple of things that I want to really talk about in here right now. The first one is that as you're working in AutoCAD, it does an automatic save. It saves after we go through things so many times. We also need to save, but there is an auto save. So one of the first things we always want to do is we want to go in and know where our auto save file is going to be located. I don't expect you to remember this at this point. What I do hope is that if you do, say for instance your computer crashes and it doesn't take you to the recovery file, that you can remember you can go here and you might look to be able to find your auto save file. The next thing we're going to look at is display. This area right here is what's defined here. My cursor is white, my crosshairs are white, my screen is black. We typically like to draw on a black screen in AutoCAD because we draw with colors, so the black screen makes them show up a lot better. One thing I do want you to change here is right here in the middle of this box. It's the crosshair. The crosshair, and I'll go back to mine here in just a second, is where my cursor is in the middle of, and then I have a horizontal and vertical line. Yours is probably set to where it's kind of short. I like to have it go all the way across my screen in both directions. It's a very good visual tool when you're first learning how to draw. So say yours is set like this. It might look like that currently. When we turn it to 100, now you see it goes all the way across the screen. So please set yours to match mine. Other than that, we are not going to change anything here, but there are lots of different things we can change. Open and save. I mentioned automatic save or auto save. Right here in the middle is the auto save. It should have a check mark in it, and currently yours is probably set to maybe like 15 minutes or something like that. You may want to change that to like 5 minutes. I can do a lot of work in 5 minutes. I can lose a lot of work in 15 minutes. So I like to set mine about 5 minutes. Used to, when we had autosave, when it did that, your computer would just kind of stop and you would know it was saving. Now it'll do the automatic save and you won't even know it. So set it at whatever you feel comfortable with. Get in the habit of checking that every time you sit down to a computer, especially in our labs, because IT comes in and makes changes and sometimes it affects us. And you may think you have your automatic save set, but you do not. Plot and publish, we're not going to do anything there. System, again, there are lots of things that you can customize. We're not going to be doing any customization because I want all of ours to be looking the same. Same here. Drafting, you can change the size of the aperture where your crosshairs are. I suggest you leave it at the default. If you make it too big, then it starts to pick things that you don't want it to pick. So it's good habit to leave it the way that it is. 3D modeling, we are not going to do. Selection, this again has to do with your pick box and your grip size. We're going to leave all that as the default. And then you can actually set a profile. You can get things set on the computer the way that you want them, and then you can go in and copy that file and take it and put it on a different computer, and won't have to go back in and set everything up. So I'm going to hit apply, and I'm going to say OK. The next thing that I want you to do is there's an option for dynamic input. When I have found when students are first learning to draw, that dynamic input causes them a lot of issues. So all you need to do is pull your cursor down to the command line and type in DYN, and it should start popping up some commands that you can see here. And what we want is Dyn mode. Yours is probably set to 3. Just come over here beside the colon and type in 0 and hit enter. Once you do that, then your screen should look like mine. Again, if you're seeing, when you're moving things, if you're seeing angles and dash lines and dimensions and stuff, then your Dyn mode is on. So we've kind of talked about the big red A, or the application menu. These are your quick access toolbars. In here again, you have new, you have open, you have save, you have save as, you have open from web, open from mobile, print. This is a nice tool. You have undo and redo, which we'll talk about those later. You can customize all of this, but again, we're going to leave it as it is. You're going to find that there are multiple ways to do the same thing. So I can go to new here, I can go to new here, I could even come down here and type new and hit enter, and it will take me to the same place. When AutoCAD first started, we didn't have the graphics like we do today, and so a lot of things were done with key commands. Then we went to 2 key commands, then we went to a digitizer pad, and then we finally turned to what we're closer to today. So again, there's multiple ways to do the same thing. I use a lot of key commands because that's how I learn, but I will try to make sure to show you where they're at on the menus, and also the key commands if I know them. Your book does have a list of key commands in it. Again, over here in the middle is going to tell you what the drawing is. At this point, we have not saved our drawing. You'll see you have 2 tabs here. You have Start, which is where we started from, and then once we opened a new file, now we have a new drawing here called Drawing 1. So we don't want to leave this as Drawing 1. We're going to do this as a test. If you recall, we set up our OneDrive. So at this point, before I go any further, I should get in the habit of saving my drawing. So for the first time, I want to do Save As. And I'm going to go, you should have your OneDrive over here to the left. So I'm going to click on my OneDrive, and I am going to go to where my folder is, and I'm going to go in here and I'm going to save it. Again, when you save the name of it, I'm going to tell you what to name it. Make sure you name it correctly. Now you'll notice it has the name of the drawing, and it has .dwg. That means it is an AutoCAD file. If you pull down here, you see you have some other options for saving it. .dwt is the template file. So if I were to save this as a .dwt instead of a .dwg, when I go look for a .dwg file, I'm not going to find one because my template is saved in a different format. So again, you can save it right here. If you're working in anything newer than 2020, you should see that it still is saving it down to 2018. So I can open your files in 2021. So again, I want to name this, and I'm going to tell you what to name it, but for my purposes, I usually name it test, or I name it junk or something, so that when I go into my files, I can see that I don't want to keep that file. So I'm going to do save. On over here to the right, you have your help menu. Again, I'm not a big proponent of the Autodesk help. It is internet based, which is better than it used to be, but I'm going to type in the word line and hit enter. It's going to bring up my help. and you see it's going to give me a lot of different things, a whole bunch of pages. So I would have to kind of go through and read it and see what I want to do. Typically when I'm looking for directions on how to do something, I just go to Google and I type in AutoCAD line and what I want to do with that line, and then it usually gives me some very quick answers to what I need. But your help is up here. If we're having an exam or something and you can't remember how to do something, you can always use your help, because that's what you would do in a real world situation. Over here to the right, we have some other things. We're not going to talk about them right now. We have our minimize, where you can minimize the screen, maximize the screen. If you click on this X, you notice you have both of those here. This one takes you completely out of AutoCAD. This one will just take you out of the particular drawing that you're in. Luckily, AutoCAD always asks you if you want to save before, when you click like on that X, it'll save, want to ask you if you want to save. So that's a good thing. If you don't save it in the right location, it's probably saving it to your documents. That's where I would go look first if you can't find it. The next thing we're going to talk about are the menus, and we're not going to go through these too hard and heavy today because I don't want to spend a lot of time overwhelming you with things. Most of the work that we are going to be doing is going to be on this home ribbon. We will do some things here on the insert tab when we get into blocks. We will use the annotate tab. Annotate in AutoCAD is basically your text, so we will be doing some things with that. Parametric, we will not be using that in here, but this is a way that you can lock and put constraints on things so that only they can be changed in certain manners. View, we will talk about some of this part of this menu. Manage, we won't be doing anything on this one. Output, we won't be doing anything on that because we'll just print regularly. Add-ins, you can have add-ins to your programs. Autodesk puts out a lot of add-in programs. Other suppliers and such put in add-in programs that make your job easier. So you can always go out and get add-ins to your projects. Collaborate, this is how we can collaborate with our consultants and stuff. Express tools. Express tools are some shortcut things that people have come up with. Again, we're not going to get into a lot of these, but there are some nice things there. Under each area, you'll see under the Home tab, from here to here is the Draw menus. From here to here are the Modify menus. From here to here are the Annotation, Layers, Blocks, Properties, etc. So if I want to use one of these tools, you'll notice I have a line, I have a polyline, I have a circle, but my circle has an arrow under it. If I click on that arrow, you see I have other options. Depending on the information I'm given, will help me decide which one of these tools I need to use to draw my circle. Again, I have a few more over here. These are the ones, the commands that Autodesk feels are used the most. Again, all of this can be customized depending on what you're doing. Say for instance I need something else that I don't see there. I do have some other draw tools down here. If I use the donut all the time, I may want to put that up here in my main menu. So again, everything can be customized. The next grouping are the Modify tools. Basically, to draw anything, you have to be able to use the Draw tools and the Modify tools. That way you can draw something, modify it to the shape that you want it to be, and you're good to move on. In AutoCAD, since we're drawing in 2 dimensions, those are the main commands that we use. Annotation, like I mentioned, has to do with all of our text. Layers, we're going to talk about layers here in a few weeks. Once we get into layers, if you don't use layers, you're going to lose lots of points on your assignments. I always tell my students, if you came to work for me, I gave you an assignment or a project, you brought it back to me, you didn't use layers, I would tell you to go home. That's how critical layers are in AutoCAD. And then we have some other tools over here. As I mentioned, we have these tabs. We can have multiple drawings open at the same time. It's very easy to do. You'll notice down here in the bottom left, you see the XY coordinates. Anything horizontally is X, anything vertically is Y. This character right here is our command line. We don't necessarily have to take our cursor down like I did. If I want to type a line, I can just type in L. You notice my cursor is up in the middle of my screen, and I can either pick it here or I can just hit enter because I know that's the command for line. So I don't have to go down here to the cursor, but if you get lost in a command, this is a really good place to look because it will tell you what you need to do next. So your command line is very important. This area here, the black screen, this is called model space. Basically what this is an infinite size piece of paper. We draw most everything in model space. So when we draw something, we draw it true to length. So if something is 100 feet long, we draw it 100 feet long. We don't print it at 100 feet long, but we draw it at 100 feet long. We draw everything true to size in Autocad. And that is our model space, and that's where most everything is drawn. If I click on this tab here called Layout, what does it look like? It looks like a piece of paper. So I use the Layout tabs to set up my sheets, and we'll get into that much later in the semester. Down here at the bottom, I have some other tools, and we'll talk about these tools. One tool I want to talk about right now is my Ortho. When I go to draw a line, and again I can go to line here, I can type in L for line and it'll bring it up over here and I can pick it, or since I know L is the shortcut, I can just do that. So to start drawing a line, if I look at the command line, it says line specify first point. So for now I'm just going to pick a point. Okay, I don't care what the point is. Now you'll see my cursor just kind of floats around. If I wanted to draw a line straight up, I'd have to kind of guess. And if I wanted to draw it horizontally, I'd have to kind of guess. But if I turn my Ortho on, right now it's gray, and I want it to be blue so that I know that it's on. If I click on that, now it locks my cursor into going horizontally and vertically. This is really, really important. If you're drawing a horizontal or vertical line, make sure your Ortho is on, because I promise you, I can tell if it's not straight. It's not perfectly straight. So that is very important. Again, we'll talk about a lot of these other things down here at the bottom as we get further along. So let's practice drawing a line. Remember, we talked about absolute points. Most of the time, right here where this X and Y is, down here in the bottom corner, that point right there is 0, 0. That is the center of our coordinate system. So let's just test it and see. I'm going to click on line, and you'll see in the command line it says specify first point. Well, I want to see if that actually is 0, 0. So I'm going to type in 0, 0. And if I hit enter, and now if I turn my Ortho back off, you'll see that it's coming directly out of the center of that XY coordinate. So I know that is 0, 0. So say I want to draw a line that goes directly horizontal. There's a couple things I can do. One, I can put in the absolute point. So say I want it to go 0 in the X direction and 10 in the Y direction. So if I type in 0, 10, you'll see it did a vertical line. To get out of my line command, you'll notice after I did the one absolute point, it's still letting me do more. So I can either continue and put in another point, and I'm just going to do some clicking here so you can see, and draw as many line segments as I want. When I am done, I have to hit enter to get out of the line command. From this point, I want the line to go 10 perfectly horizontal. The other thing I can do is I can turn that Ortho on. I can drag my cursor to the right, and all I have to do is put in 10. I don't have to put in 2 coordinates. So I can either use my coordinates, or I can use my Ortho and just pull my cursor and go in that direction. So say I want to continue a line using absolute points. I'm going to start here, and I'm just going to pick a point to start. And then I'm going to say I want it to go to 12, 12, and I hit enter. So what it did is it went to the absolute point of 12, 12. So next I want it to go to, from there, I want it to go to negative 12, negative 14. You can see it went to the absolute point. I'm going to go back and I'm going to do it as relative points. I'm going to pick this point for my starting point where I started before, and I believe I did 12 as an absolute point. If I do it as a relative point and I use my @ symbol and I put in 12, 12, you'll see it went a totally different direction. So it's very, very important to distinguish between absolute points and relative points. Don't forget, if it's a relative point, you have to use the @ symbol. A couple other things I want to share with you. I'm going to start my line command again, and again I'm just going to pick some points. Say I get lost in my command and I'm done. I can hit my escape key on my keyboard and it will take me out of any command that I'm in. So a lot of times I get frustrated if it's not doing what I want it to do. I call my escape key my frustration key, and I might hit it about 10 times when it's only necessary to hit it once. But again, that is a way to get out of things. If I want to erase something, I can click on it and just hit my delete key on my keyboard. Also, you have an erase tool right up here. So if I need to erase something, I just click on it and hit enter. When I'm done with a command, I have to hit enter to get out of my command on almost everything. So the line command is one of the main tools that we use. For your assignment today, you also need to know how to do the circle command. If you look up here, you have multiple choices on how to do the circle. You have circle that you can do center radius, or you can do center diameter. There is a difference. So let's start with center radius. If I click on that and I look down at the command line down here, it says specify center point for the circle. I'm just going to pick a point, okay? And then it says specify the radius of the circle, and then in parentheses it has diameter. So if I said, oops, I picked radius, I meant to pick diameter, all I would have to do is type in D and hit enter, and now it's asking for the diameter. So I'm going to put in 5 for the diameter. I'm going to go back to the circle, and I'm going to go back and pick radius this time, and I'm going to just come over here to the side, and I'm going to put in 5 for the radius. So you can see there is a huge difference between radius and diameter. So make sure what information you're given, you use the right tool for that. So you're going to draw some lines today, and you're going to draw some circles. So you get your drawing all done. Make sure when you're done, you do a save, and typically I recommend you do a save as, so that you make sure where you're saving it, so that I know it's in the right place and that it didn't go to my documents and is trying to save it there. So again, you would go back to your OneDrive, you would go to wherever your documents are, and you would save it in there. And now it is done. Hopefully that's pretty quick. We're just kind of getting into it a little bit. So if I tell you on a line that it needs to start at 1, 6, you'll see from there it went up 6 and over 1. Then if I tell you to draw a line at -1, 6, it's going to do that. So on your assignment today, and we'll get into this here a little bit more, you should have no diagonal or angled lines on your final drawing. But we'll talk about that again here in a minute. So I'm going to get out of this and I'm going to go to the assignment.